I'm Barry Trammell, and now you know why we call them the Fighting Baylor Bears.
They're fighting back, and so are the Iowa State Cyclones. What's going on in the Big 12? From the Opopco Studios in Oklahoma City, you're watching the Press Row. I'm Jenny Carlson. Press Row is brought to you by Cox High-Speed Internet. Barry, conference realignment, we can't get away from it. Always something happening. This week, it's Baylor putting out a little bit of a PR campaign, and then lo and behold, it sounds like they may try to sue Texas A&M or the SEC or all of the above. What in the heck's going on?
Well, I mean, Baylor's fighting for its life, and you can understand why. The Bears are the one school in the league that has no options if it comes to conference realignment. Iowa State might be able to land somewhere. Kansas State, Missouri probably would land somewhere. But Baylor, no options perhaps other than Conference USA. So not a good forecast for Baylor. So Baylor is fighting to the death to keep the Big 12 together. Now, if you do you like their tactics? I don't know. The Texas A&M deal, trying to keep Texas A&M from going to the SEC, that I think apparently that has worked to some degree. It has slowed the momentum. The SEC was ready to admit A&M this week, and now the SEC says, "Oh, let's figure this out." The other tactic that Baylor spearheaded, which was agreeing to let A&M go without fear of lawsuit, only if Oklahoma would recommit to the Big 12. That made Baylor no friends among certain people in the Big 12, primarily the Bedlam rivals, Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. I don't know where Oklahoma will be. I don't know exactly where Oklahoma wants to be, but I can tell you this, they don't want to be in a league with the Baylor Bears anymore. So it was a little bit of the tonic also kills you for Baylor. So it's a very difficult spot for Baylor. Kenneth Starr, the president, is playing some hardball. I don't see it ending well for Baylor. But you can certainly understand why Baylor's doing this. They're fighting for their conference life.
Yeah, and definitely, Iowa State, there's some talk that they're sort of in this conversation as well, fighting back against A&M leaving, or if they're not fighting that, they're maybe fighting the dissolving of the Big 12. And yeah, you can totally understand why these schools are trying every last-ditch effort they can to keep this conference together. I mean, you think about how life would change on some of these campuses, Baylor, Iowa State, maybe even some others that might not have quite as soft a landing spot. If the Big 12 dissolves, you go from a very major payout from the conference that's coming into your coffers and helping you fund all your programs to maybe being in a mid-level conference where there's no TV money coming in. Everybody's fighting for their lives. It's just such a dramatic change when you think about going from a BCS conference setup to a non-BCS conference setup. It's not the end of you. We've seen non-BCS, non-automatic qualifying schools do well, but yet it so hampers everything that you do on your campus. It so changes life from one day to the next that you can see why these schools are really wanting the Big 12 to stay together. But Barry, I think at the end of the day, even with all of this that's going on, I still think the Big 12, I still think Texas A&M goes, and ultimately I still think OU, OSU, and two Texas schools end up going to the Pac-12.
Well, if A&M goes, Oklahoma's out. I mean, I think that's clear. I think the Sooners have checked out, and frankly, it seems like maybe the Sooners have checked out anyway. I don't know that Oklahoma would go to the Pac-12 until the SEC pulls the trigger on A&M. I don't think the Pac-12 wants to be the instigator of super conferences. Doesn't want to be the first conference to go past 12 teams. But if the SEC does, then I think the Pac-10 makes the move, and Oklahoma would be the first pick. So to me, it's a very chaotic situation. It's a pirate ship of a league anymore, and everybody's sleeping with one eye open because you don't trust anybody. That's no way to have a conference. I think, David Bourne a week ago talked about how stability and trust is very important. We've got less stability and less trust now than we did a week ago. I see no good future for the Big 12.
And it's strange that all these games in the Big 12 now, as we are looking towards the conference slate starting here in a few weeks, games that maybe held no intrigue or little intrigue before are now heightened. I think if Baylor is somehow going to block this A&M move for a while, that game, which might have been a marginal interest prior to what happened earlier this week, now it sort of has these undertones of, Baylor trying to halt things and hold A&M back, hold them hostage. That's even been talked about amongst A&M people. So, Baylor coming and playing Oklahoma State or Oklahoma, how does that matchup change? A lot of undercurrents to this whole thing. And Barry's right. A league that we thought was in tatters and disheveled a couple weeks ago, now it looks even worse. How can we even imagine this conference staying together? It just doesn't seem like there's any possible way there's cohesion amongst these teams when there's so much infighting. Hey, stay with the best coverage team anywhere at newsok.com and every day in the Oklahoman. And remember, we're brought to you by Cox High-Speed Internet.